I'm Dana Reinhardt from Windset Farms, and today we'll be making my mom's meatloaf with a Windset Roma tomato glaze. I'm going to start by making the glaze, and then we'll shape the meatloaf and bake it. So to make the glaze, we're going to start with 4 of the Windset Roma tomatoes. And I'm just going to coarsely chop these, because basically what we're going to do is puree this glaze. So the chopping isn't important. It's going to cook down into a thick sauce. And all of these go in the pot. And I have a nub of ginger here. Again, I don't even have to peel this ginger because this is just going to be a coarse chop for the glaze. We're going to be straining all of this out. Basically what we want is the flavor from the ginger. So coarse chop of the ginger. I have some balsamic vinegar, some Lee & Perrins Worcester sauce, and some beautiful farm honey. You want about 2 to 4 tablespoons of the honey. We're just going to turn this on. We're going to let this reduce till it's almost dry. So this will take about 10 to 15 minutes on medium-high heat. So our glaze is basically ready. It's reduced down by at least 2/3, and it's fairly thick, so I'm going to turn this off. Bring our little mini chopper over, and we're going to puree this, and then we're going to actually strain it. So this goes. Be careful when you're dealing with something hot like this, a hot liquid going into a food processor. You'll want to make sure you don't splash yourself and burn yourself. Okay, here we go. I like to put a little cover over in case there's any splashing. There we go. I've got a fine mesh strainer and a bowl, and we're just going to strain the glaze through that. You can use the back of a spoon. I like to use the back of a ladle. So this is nice and thick and rich with the honey. And the tomatoes, the Romas have now reduced down, and that's our Roma tomato glaze. So now we're ready to make the meatloaf. We have some eggs, a little bit of grainy Dijon, shallots, garlic, breadcrumbs, and some whipping cream. I have a mixture of beef and ground pork, and some spicy Italian sausage, which I'm just going to take out of its casing and add this directly to the meat mixture. I like the spicy Italian sausage just because it adds a little bit of richness to the meatloaf. So I've got my ground Italian sausage, ground pork, ground beef, Maestro Bell Pepper from Windset. Just going to take the pepper, and we're going to chop this fairly fine. This adds a little pop and a little bit of color to the meatloaf. I'm going to take a little bit of butter and add that to our pot. Add our Maestro Bell peppers to the butter. I saute these just to give an extra layer of flavor to the meatloaf. Some shallots, some garlic, and we'll season that with a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. We're going to take our ground meat and add the rest of our ingredients. Chopped thyme and sage. I like the grainy Dijon because it adds a nice hit of acidity. 1 egg. A little bit of whipping cream. Again, this just adds some richness and a little bit of moisture. Fresh breadcrumbs. And there we go. So they're just nice and fragrant. The maestros, the garlic, the shallots, straight into the meatloaf mixture. And then we mix it. Make sure it's really well incorporated. You don't want lumps of breadcrumbs or pieces of sausage. You want the whole thing really well mixed, and you want to make sure that those maestros are nicely mixed in because they add a little pop to the meatloaf once it's cooked. So that's ready to go. You can bake it in a pan if you'd like, but I kind of actually prefer to freeform it. And I make it into almost like a loaf. There you go. So the meatloaf's ready to go into the oven. You want to bake the meatloaf in a 375-degree oven for about 30 minutes. Turn it around, bake it for another 25, or until a meat thermometer reads 160 degrees Fahrenheit on the internal temperature. So I'm just going to put this into the oven. And we're ready to go. There we go, Mum's meatloaf. Now we take the Roma tomato glaze that we made earlier and just brush this all over the top. The great thing about this glaze is that it's also excellent on baked ham, really good on baby back ribs, and even better on a cold meatloaf sandwich the next day. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to cut a nice big slice of this meatloaf off. There we go. I like my meatloaf with mashed potatoes, but this would work equally well with Windset's Roma smashed potatoes. Reminds me of being a kid, mashed potatoes and Mum's meatloaf with a Roma tomato glaze from Windset.